Navy destroyers threw away deck cannons for vertical launch cells decades ago, and now the US Army's 25th Infantry Division just started replacing many of their old howitzer guns for HIMARS missile launchers. The Marine Corps is also increasingly scrapping their tubed artillery for missiles as well. Just look at how last year Taiwan canceled their original order of American tubed artillery pieces that they were supposed to get, and instead they purchased 29 of the HIMARS missile launchers from the United States. Friendship ended with artillery, now missiles is my best friend. Artillery is slowly being reduced in favor of this missile system, and it's got huge consequences for the balance of power in many regions. For example, these are the first US supplied systems capable of hitting all the way into the Chinese mainland on the other side of the Taiwan Strait, which has in turn gotten a response from the Chinese People's Liberation Army. They released this video footage on state TV of a cheap Wish.com lightweight replica HIMARS mock-up that appears to be for training and target practice purposes, which is the military equivalent of a punching bag. It helps relieve all that built-up stress of being on the edge of war for years. Missiles are the new currency of war, you guys, and it's tough to fully appreciate just how fast all of this is changing, but between 2024 and 2026, the US military cranked up investment in missiles from $4 billion to $8 billion a year. I'm no mathematician, but that's like double in just 2 years. But at the same time, we've become high on our own missile supply. It's seen as a major risk and liability. The risks were on full display when in just 12 days, Israel and Iran fighting one another in 2025, the United States blew through a quarter of its load of THAAD air defense interceptors. War games still have predicted that America would go dry on some critical missile munitions within just 1 week of fighting against China. Officials have leaked to the press that there's only 25% of the total number of Patriot missiles needed after supplying all allies. So today I want to examine, can America ramp up missile production and increase the amount of launchers in the force? And what is the Army's new missile fighting doctrine? This video's partner is Supremacy World War III. I play it as a way to kill time when I'm at the pharmacy at 2 in the morning and there's a long line and I'm buying something not even a little bit embarrassing. It's a free-to-play online PvP strategy game that now has this new officer feature that lets me add elite commanders that each have their own unique powerful tactical boosts. So choosing the right officer adds a new dynamic to the gameplay, because it enhances my army's performance based on their specialization, whether they're infantry, armor, air force, or navy. This adds a ton of depth on how I plan out my overall strategy. In Supremacy World War III, I get to play as a real country like the United States and build up my force from over 100 modern weapon systems and a research tree with more than 250 units to absolutely obliterate the enemy. But it's not all about blowing stuff up. You can forge alliances for cooperative gameplay too, not me though, because no new friends. It's free, no credit card required. Just click my link in the description. It'll get you an exclusive starter pack containing one free seasonal unit, the Elite Bomber, with a value of $25. Offer valid for the next 30 days. Just click my link to try it out if you're looking for a fun way to kill some downtime. I mean, artillery isn't going away by any means, don't get me wrong, but a noticeable shift is happening, a rebalancing of the force, if you will. One way to look at it is America's missiles are now the most in-demand weapon system of all, making up nearly half of all export market of defense industry. Fellas, missiles are now the holographic Charizard card of the defense industry. It's the tickle me Elmo of lethality. Every time I turn around, it seems like there's a brand new delivery platform. The Global Mobile Artillery Rocket System doubles the amount of munitions that can be fired compared to the old HIMARS. The Typhon launcher shoots long-range ground attack cruise missiles as far as all get out. We're fast changing the ratio of shells to rockets because they can go much further, they're safe from enemy FPV drone range, and they're far more accurate. And they have both a defensive and offensive role. But curiously, all of these jobs are still found under the field artillery branch. What's that about? In recent years, I've noticed that field artillery is morphing into something bigger, something more beautiful, something more strategic. It's turning into what leadership is starting to call long-range precision fires. LRPF is flagged as the US Army's #1 modernization priority. It's top of the list. What is America's missile fighting doctrine anyway? Well, there's actually no official field manual on it, as I could find. It's very strange. There's an official document on tubed artillery doctrine, tank doctrine, air doctrine, naval doctrine. There's a doctrine for everything down to how you wear your friggin' socks. But what we rarely hear about is missile doctrine or tactics, even though they have that in China and Russia. And that's partly because the United States, until recently, treated missiles like they were simply enablers. They were the red-headed stepchild of munitions. They were a means to an end, used to open the door for aircraft and tanks. It was only starting in the 2020s that the US Army started seriously talking about missiles as a main course. This doctrine is found spread out across a few different documents that I was able to find. The main publications include FM 301, which is US Army Air and Missile Defense Operations, ADP 3-19, which is fires, and then strolling on over to look at From the Missile Defense to Missile Defeat, written in 2024 by retired Lieutenant General Daniel Karbler. In it, he talks about the Arrow Archer Quiver model, which is an easy way for my brain to understand it. I love those kind of analogies, don't you? Basically, instead of waiting for the arrow to hit you, you target the archer and knock out the launcher vehicles. Then you go deeper by attacking their missile stockpiles and factories, hitting the quiver. What that means is the doctrine is to destroy the adversary's missiles before they can even launch. Lieutenant General Karbler reframes missile doctrine. Instead of primarily reacting to and intercepting missiles, which is the most expensive, he argues the Army must proactively shape the battlefield through what's called missile defeat. This idea of missile defeat is key. The concept is to disrupt enemy missile systems before they can even launch. It argues that missile defeat should be a first principle of future operations, especially in the Army's new multi-domain operations. In order to achieve missile defeat, you need a lot of volume of fire, but achieving that isn't easy. Why is this change happening all of a sudden? Traditionally, the main thing preventing missiles from replacing artillery has partly been that they cost a ton more and are more difficult to replace. For example, just look at how ramping up production of 155 artillery shells has been relatively straightforward. The Army has already managed to triple production from 14,000 shells per month to 40,000 shells per month. Since 2022, they were able to do that. And they're on track to hit 100,000 shells per month production by early next year. Those arty plants in Scranton, Pennsylvania are just friggin' booming. Now I'm picturing a reboot of The Office, but it's set in the defense industry. But my point is, missile production isn't as easy to scale up and down. The inherent problem is you're basically trying to predict future demand, and if you predict wrong, someone's always left holding the bag. Either the government pays millions of bucks for missiles they don't need, or defense contractors build thousands of missiles that the government refuses to pay for, which is a big fat waste. It makes coming up with an effective min-maxing strategy here very difficult. This is really saying something, because here is what the US magazine depth looks like right now when it comes to missiles. Pause it right here. Look at that shit. That's just an insane amount of missiles. Thousands and thousands. But compared to artillery, that's millions and millions. And just look at how much these bad boys cost. That's a lot compared to artillery and bullets. And the solution isn't as simple as throwing money at the problem. Costs are just one limiting factor, hamstringing the US missile arsenal from reaching its true potential. While everyone loves to talk about max ranges and warhead sizes, rarely do we consider the humble old supply chain. Lockheed has huge factories already with thousands of workers that have no problem assembling missiles quickly, but many of the electronic components and rocket motors come from smaller sub-suppliers, subcontractors. These small but critical components create bottlenecks that slow down overall production rates, no matter how big that final assembly line gets. Even if money were no object, it simply takes too long to produce some of these missiles. A major factor in that backlog has to do with design philosophy of America's missiles overall. To develop cutting-edge performance performance, engineers design their own special, unique snowflake parts to push the envelope of what's possible. These bespoke designs require dedicated parts that are farmed out to particular subcontractors with the expertise that are needed to make those advanced gizmos. So Patriot missiles and HIMARS have their own special little rocket motors instead of common parts. This creates a fragile supply chain that's vulnerable to shop closures. I mean, I highly doubt Raytheon's going to go bankrupt anytime soon, but hundreds of small subcontractors that supply them already have. A perfect example of this is when they tried to upgrade the AIM-120 air-to-air missile for their fighter jets, and Raytheon went, knocked on the door of the old supplier that they used to work with back in the day for the original guidance circuits, but found that the place was completely out of business. This meant all work ground to a complete halt. Engineers had to modify the old Navic to accept substitute parts. This is why it took 7 freaking years to get it to work. How is that allowed to happen? At the end of the Cold War, the US government slashed defense budgets, totally going ham on it and just cutting 30%, which isn't a bad thing in and of itself, but procurement of the AIM-120 missile dropped by 70%. Now, what happens when a business takes a 70% hit to their sales? Everyone's got to go back working somewhere else at that point. With their primary customer gone, contractors closed their doors or were bought up by larger conglomerates. And in a 2021 government white paper, they found that several private equity firms rolled up these smaller companies and milked the cash flow, just friggin' milking them. But they didn't reinvest in long-term production capacity because that costs money. Today, 90% of US missiles now come from just 3 main sources. Rocket motor manufacturing has shrunk from 8 separate companies in 1990 to just 2 by 2020. When you only have a handful of profit-driven companies making critical weapons, a single choke point can ripple through the entire system. However, America is trying to solve this now with the biggest changes to the defense industry since the 1980s. One of the habits that the Pentagon had to break was the temptation to make every new weapon the absolute height of tech. It's like my old squad leader used to always say, a good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan next week. Or maybe that was General Patton who said that, I don't remember. The point is, something is better. Doing it dirty and effectively is better than nothing. But those scamps in the defense industry are always finding new ways to innovate and make fancy missiles a more viable option en masse. And the poster child for all of this is Anduril Industries. They seemingly came out of nowhere like some kind of industry plant. And maybe their connections to the CIA and Palantir do make them an industry plant. But they're now creating a $1 billion, 5 million square foot manufacturing facility named Arsenal 1. Sounds like a place I would infiltrate in Metal Gear Solid, and the lore behind it is almost as absolutely batshit insane. The CEO of Anduril, Palmer Luckey, isn't your regular looking defense CEO in a black suit and tie. This guy wears sandals and shorts with a tactical hoodie along with a long goatee. The guy looks like a California surfer dude. And listen, I'm the last to judge someone for their appearances. My hairline is in full-blown retreat, and I've picked my unibrow since bullies started making fun of me for it in the 6th grade. But it's impossible to ignore this dude's unusual look and the whole strange way that the company operates. The dude is only 32 years old, but his company may be the answer to America's missile production problem. Is it just me, or should Jim Brewer play this guy in a Lifetime original movie on him? We may finally need 2 hands to count the amount of major defense companies in the United States, because they're doing things differently by accepting the cost up front to develop missiles and then taking it to the Pentagon and saying, hey, you want it, instead of waiting for the government to ask for it. They're also suing the government when they're not taking their contracts, and they're winning, so there's that too. In 2024, Anduril dropped their Barracuda M cruise missile with this anime-style release video marketing thing of the weapon system. You guys, we live in a day and age where there are anime artists out there somewhere doing work for the defense industry. You and I are probably not the audience for buying those missiles, so why pay to create a marketing video like that on YouTube? Before I was an average infantryman, I was actually an average marketing person for companies like IBM and Cisco. And I can say that this type of anime video is 100% targeting new talent. Anduril wants to bring in the next generation of young engineers who often happen to like anime and big paychecks, and so this speaks to them. Barracuda is a whole family, a happy family of missiles, each with their own range and payload for every kind of platform, from helicopters to ships. But the real selling point for Anduril is highlighting what they call their hyperscale manufacturing. The Barracuda missile's design is a radical departure from convention, and the reason for that is because most of the electrical components and the modules in there are commercial models as well, meaning that they have civilian use also. So for example, maybe it uses the same door latch as your refrigerator at home. I mean, it doesn't, but that's just an example. It means these missiles have a resilient supply chain. The whole thing can be assembled using less than 10 separate tools, so a full-on Riri like myself could do it and put it together, unlike that IKEA desk that I gave up on putting together a year ago that sits in the corner of the room right now, just judging me over there. The one that my wife says proves that I'm not handy around the house. And to hit for the buzzword cycle, yes, it's modular. Altogether, this means the Barracuda missile can be produced with 95% fewer tools in half the time and half the parts, and it's 30% cheaper than other modern cruise missiles. If it works, it could solve the problem where peacetime costs need to be kept low, but fast scaling during war needs to happen. Perfect example of this is the new production philosophy with the Blackbeard missile, which will be the first mass-produced American missile to be hypersonic at a fraction of the cost. The buzzword hypersonic gets abused by the Pentagon PR teams, but this is actually hypersonic. It's more than 5x the speed of sound. The Blackbeard is made for striking those time-sensitive targets that are moving, those hardened command and controlled outposts with precision without costing insane amount of money, and more importantly, it can be done quickly. By digging into Army budget documents, we've learned that it basically can reach 80% of the capability of that $40 million Dark Eagle missile, but for way cheaper and easier to scale production. It's a mass solution, because getting a weapon to that last 20% of extra capability is what really is difficult and triples production time and cost. By reading between the lines a little bit, what this all means is that this missile can get a range of about 800 kilometers. It's a tiny fraction of the cost of that Dark Eagle missile. It's the Walmart DVD sale bargain bin price compared to it. They created a new way to bypass red tape with the middle tier acquisition pathway that aims to shorten the entire process for new weapon systems to just 5 years or less. The way it works is, instead of developing an entire weapon system from scratch to meet the military need, they bring together existing technologies and components that are mature enough to go into a prototype essentially right away. Manufacturing is one dimension though, that's it. The other dimension is mass. In military terms, mass is how much combat power you can concentrate in an area on the battlefield at one given time. And US missile platforms will be the first target for these type of strikes. There's a new sneaky way to get missiles to the front without the enemy even knowing they're there. In August 2024, Military Times published a cryptic video showing a pop-out multiple launch rocket system rising out of a shipping container. In June 2025, the mysterious Boxo missiles showed up again at Fort Bragg. Later details from the Army revealed this mysterious box has a name. It's the Palletized Field Artillery Launcher. And these are being distributed to bases all around the world, and it's disguised, or I guess you could say camouflaged, as a common Connex box, a shipping container. So enemy intelligence will have a hard time figuring out if it's just another shipment of omelet MREs or a missile. If you ever spent time on a military base, you know these things are lousy with Connex boxes, and 9 times out of 10, they're filled with junk or random wires and shit that I swear is just there to waste hours doing inventory all day. Missiles are the new currency of warfare, and in response, the defense industry is expanding their assembly line to nearly double all missile production rates by 2028. According to unclassified budget documents, the way they're accounting for the problem of who holds the bag is multi-year purchasing contracts, which allow the Pentagon to give manufacturer the heads up that they won't leave them with a bunch of unpurchased missiles. Ultimately, the US is on track to produce in the ballpark of 12,000 missiles each year of varying varieties by 2030. If missiles are the new currency of warfare, what happens if we run out? Will America be able to successfully ramp up in time before a major conflict? I'm your average infantryman, Chris Cappy. Let me know what you think, and for show notes, full sources, and exclusive content, you can go to cappyarmy.com. And remember to check out Supremacy World War III, the free-to-play online grand strategy game that's set in the modern global wars that we follow here on this channel. Just click the link